So, new host, you can set up a beautiful Airbnb. You could have great decor, fast Wi-Fi, and even the perfect location and still get buried where no one ever sees your listing. But not because your listing is bad, but because the signals you're sending to the Airbnb algorithm is either weak or maybe they're missing. And you can have the same space as another host right on your same street. But if that other host is sending a stronger signal to the Airbnb algorithm, they're going to be fully booked while you're still waiting to get your very first inquiry. Now, I can tell you with great confidence, this isn't luck. No, this is actually strategy. And in this video, I'm going to show you the 7 research-backed moves that you can send to the Airbnb algorithm telling it to show this listing to more guests. Now, these aren't fancy tools. They're not gimmicks, just really clear, proven steps, clear signals that work right now and into the future. And by the way, I'm Seth. I'm one of the co-founders of the Innkeepers Collective. We've hosted thousands of guests across multiple cities, and we've earned about $1 million annually on Airbnb. And helping folks launch and grow profitable Airbnbs is actually what we do best. And maybe this is part confession, but that is actually not the way we started. Our very first listing was invisible. But once we learned our Airbnb read some of those early listing signals, every single thing changed for us. And that is exactly what I'm giving you in this video today. And y'all have reached out to me asking for this. And to make this simple, I've built a free new host launch checklist. And it follows the same 7 steps, those same 7 moves that I'm discussing in this video, and you can download it below. All right, y'all, so here's the roadmap for this video. We're gonna fix those first signals that you need to send to Airbnb the moment that your listing goes live. And then next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna sharpen your listing description and the photos to help you turn clicks into bookings. And then finally, I'm gonna show you not only how to launch strong, but how to stay visible this week and months to come. And y'all, you're gonna wanna stick with me in this video because I'm also gonna share one of those mistakes that quietly pushes new hosts off of page 1 of Airbnb. And y'all, a lot of hosts don't even realize when this is happening. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off with that first important move. Here's what we know. Guests don't actually read paragraphs of text when they stumble onto your listing, especially those first 3 lines. They're really gonna skim those first 3 lines. And here's what we miss as hosts. Those first 3 lines decide the entire thing. They decide whether guests keep on scrolling or whether or not they will click to view your listing more closely. Now, I want you to watch this closely because here in a moment, I'm going to show you exactly how to maximize these first 3 lines. And I want you to consider this a formula for how to do this. So line 1 is you're going to say what it is. Something like modern 2-bedroom near Beltline, free parking. And on line 2, you're going to say who is it for? Perfect for families or remote workers. And then on line 3, you're going to tell them why they can trust it. Say something like fast Wi-Fi, self-check-in, and walk to cafes. And y'all, that is actually what I call the 3-line punch. It gives guests clarity, confidence, and curiosity all in just a few seconds. And here's a step that you can take today to push this just a little further. And so after watching this video, I want you to open your listing and read the first 3 lines out loud. And if a stranger can't tell what it is, who it's for, and why it's worth booking, I want you to go ahead and rewrite those first 3 lines using that formula I just shared. And once you do this, you're going to notice instant clarity. And guess what? Your guests are going to notice the same thing as well. All right, now let's move on to that second move, which is title the problem, not the property. And I want you to think of your title not as a label, but more of like a mini billboard. And I hate to tell you this, guests don't actually care if it's cozy. They care that it solves their problem. So instead of saying cozy midterm apartment, try something instead like walk to convention center, free parking, quiet 2-bedroom. And so that line tells me what I need, it solves my biggest pain point, and those things together are gonna make me click on your listing. All right, now here's one more thing you can do to push this just a little further. And I want you to add one of these word or phrases that connects to your guests on a deeper level. Add something like near a stadium, walk to downtown, or perfect for traveling nurses. And this is important because one of these words will activate what psychologists refer to as the self-relevance bias. And that simply means our brains light up when we see ourselves reflected in the text. All right, let's keep going. Let's move on to that third move, the photo order that sells. And this probably goes without saying, but your photos are the first impression, and it's actually one of the strongest sales tools that you have connected to your listing. And because it's true, your photos should not feel random. Instead, they should tell a strong and compelling story. All right, now let's get practical. Here's how you order these photos. You want to start with the hero shot, something that's bright, wide, and welcoming. And then what you want to do is you want to guide guests through your space in this particular order. Now, do it in this order now, y'all. Start with the living room, then on to the kitchen, then the bedroom, bathroom, and patio. And this next point is important, y'all. You will want to end with an emotional moment. Maybe something like a steaming cup of coffee on a desk, or maybe like the sun coming in on your porch. Something that evokes a strong emotion in your potential guests. All right, and here's one more step that you can take to really hammer this point home. And before you take those photos, I want you to actually really spruce up your lighting. And you can do this by turning off all the overhead lights and then opening up the curtains in your space. And you're doing this because natural light actually communicates freshness. It actually helps your space feel really clean. And you want to do this because that yellow or even the uneven light tells the brain that this thing feels old, stale, or in some cases, it may even make your space feel unclean. And y'all, you will want to do this because that one step alone can make your space look 50% more professional without doing a single thing else. All right, now let's move on to that fourth move, the 5-sentence snapshot. And what I want you to remember regarding your listing description, when it's really long, it tends to overwhelm people. Instead, what I want you to do is give us a quick and accessible mental map. 5 sentences that summarize everything that matters. So here's a checklist, y'all, a checklist of what should be in this description. So the first sentence is what it is and how many people it sleeps. And that second sentence is where it's located relative to something that is known or like a main landmark. And that third sentence is what comforts they get, such as Wi-Fi, AC, and free parking. And that fourth sentence is what actually makes this listing unique, such as a working desk, a crib, a fenced yard. And that fifth sentence is why can they trust it? Say something like self-check-in, responsive host. So these are the only 5 things that you should include in this section. So here's the step that I want you to take today. I want you to open your notes app or grab a piece of notebook paper and write down these 5 sentences today. And when you do this, I'm inviting you to see your listing with a fresh set of eyes. And by doing this, you're going to give your guests finally the context they need and the confidence they need to book your listing. All right, let's keep going. Let's move on to that fifth move, the 10-day launch sprint. And your first 10 days on Airbnb are everything. And what I want you to remember is the algorithm rewards momentum, not perfection. So here's how you can launch strong. For days 1 through 3, what I want you to do is set your rate 10% below market to attract your first set of bookings. On days 4 through 7, what I want you to focus in is on increasing those 5-star stays. And you're going to do this by responding very quickly to your guests. Want to make sure your responses are clear. You also want to focus in on fixing any of those issues that come up as quickly as possible. Then on days 8 to 10, what I want you to do is to focus on improving some of those micro comforts by adding a few surprises. And these are things like adding bottled water or handwritten card, some of those reciprocity actions that will prompt your guests to leave a review. And here's an additional way that you can push this 10-day strategy even a little further. On that same notebook paper in the Notes app, what I want you to do is to write down your weekday rates as well as your weekend rates for the next 10 days. You're not going to go and make changes to your price every day. Instead, consistency tells the Airbnb algorithm that you are steady and that you're reliable. And y'all, it is actually that consistency that always beats chaos in the algorithm. So no chaotic moves. Stay steady, have that clear strategy, and work it in those first 10-day period. All right, now let's move on to that sixth move. Message timing that feels human. And here's what I could tell you. Guests don't actually want an endless set of replies. They really want confidence. These are the only 4 touch points that you need to make with a guest. I want you to follow this closely now. The first one is booking confirmation within the first 10 minutes after your guest book. Send a pre-arrival message 24 hours before your guests check in with all the critical details. Send a mid-stay check-in just to show that you care. This one goes a long way now, y'all. And then the fourth and final message that you want to send is a checkout, thanks, and then the prompt to leave a review. And here's an additional factor to kind of spice up these messages. I want you to remember to add a sensory line to them. And in your pre-arrival note, add a simple detail that guests can actually imagine. So say something like the lamps are going to be left on in the hallway and there's fresh coffee waiting for you on the counter. And that small line tends to kind of lower the stress level of your guests and actually make that welcome piece feel very personal. And y'all, this works because the brain associates these sensory cues with comfort and safety. So it's really important that you do this. All right, now let's move on to that seventh move, the 2 jobs that every listing must do. And I've talked about this at length in other videos, but every listing really only has 2 jobs. The first one is to make it easy for guests to say yes, and that second job is to make it easy for them to leave raving 5-star reviews. And you can succeed at job 1 and really still kind of fail in the long term if you don't deliver on job 2. In job 2, designing to get those 5-star reviews happens when you send really clear instructions, when your space feel comfortable, and when you're there to support your guests when something goes wrong. And here's an additional thing that you can do today. I want you to pick one comfort feature that you'll add this week. Maybe something like blackout curtains or softer bedding, or maybe like USB chargers next to the bed. And I know this next point might hit a little bit hard, but guests don't remember your design, they remember how you made them feel. And think about when you're standing in the grocery store looking at the checkout lines, and you don't pick the best checkout line. You actually pick the checkout line that feels really fast and gives you a sense of certainty that you're going to be able to get through quickly. Your Airbnb listing is really the same. And when your title, your photos, and that flow feels really simple and reliable, guests are going to choose you every single time because you become the logical and obvious choice. And y'all, I want you to focus on simplicity because simplicity wins every single time. And here's one of the mistakes that most hosts will make that pushes you off of page 1 of Airbnb's homepage. And that is chaotic pricing. Airbnb's new algorithm rewards predictability, and changing your rates every single day tells Airbnb that you are unstable. And it also tells your guests that you are uncertain. So here's what I want you to do instead. I want you to consider the 3-tier pricing model. Have 1 weekday rate, 1 weekend rate, and 1 special event pricing rate. And don't change them every day. I want you to keep them steady for at least 30 days because that stability builds trust not just with guests, but also with the Airbnb algorithm. So go ahead and sharpen those titles, update your photo order, make your messages sound much more human, and keep the pricing steady. And when you put all this together, you're going to move from being invisible on Airbnb to becoming irresistible on Airbnb. And if this video gave you some details that you can use to improve your listing and grow your ranking on Airbnb, I want you to go and hit the like button, because when you do that, y'all, that's actually free, but it goes a long way to telling YouTube that other hosts would like this information as well. And of course, I want to invite you to hit the subscribe button because we are building out this community and I want you to be a part of it. I post videos just like this every single week, helping hosts like yourself both launch and grow profitable Airbnbs. So go and hit subscribe. And after you master the details in this video, your next move is about sharpening your guest communication, because the way you message your guests is actually what turns new bookings into raving 5-star reviews. So click here for the next video on guest messaging templates that gets 5-star reviews. It is already live and pairs perfectly with today's checklist. And when you watch this video, you will know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to build trust that leads to return guests year after year and month after month. Because when you pair what you've learned in this video with that one, you're going to be ahead of 90% of the other hosts in your market. Click here to watch this next video.